Hey fellas, this is the third installment of HLTV Confirmed. Thank you so much for tuning in. This time around I'm going to be looking at everything outside the actual game. This means the event schedule. It's very busy right now. What does that mean for players and tournament organizers? We're going to be taking a look at different streaming platforms, which are good and which are maybe not, and also the revenue generated and how alive the scene actually is and what it takes for TOs and players and teams to actually grow the scene and keep growing it. Mainly I'll be showing you an interview I did with Michele Attisani, who is the co-founder and chief business officer at FACEIT. I did it at the ECS Season 5 finals in London back over a month ago. The interview revolves around their role as a TO, so I picked his brain about that, and I hope you find it interesting to get his side of things and maybe a little bit of insight as to how TOs, tournament organizers, actually operate. We're also going to be examining the CSPPA, or the Counter-Strike Pro Players Association. It's a new player union that was announced a few weeks back, and they say they already have around 90 members and that they're going to be acting as a unified voice for players in their striving to better their own conditions at events and other stuff. At ESL Cologne, we talked to players and also ESL about their thoughts on there being a player union, something that we've been talking about and that's been debated for years and years now. So that's what's on the menu for this third installment of HLTV Confirmed. Let's jump right into it with my interview with FACEIT CBO and co-founder Michele Attisani at the ECS Season 5 finals. Enjoy. Okay, we're here at the ECS Season 5 finals in London. I'm joined by Michele Attisani, co-founder of FACEIT.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Michele?
Very good, you?
Yeah, I'm fine. So action is on the way right now, but we're actually going to be taking a little bit broader look of the scene and your role as a TO.
Of course.
So right now, busy schedule,
yeah.
Lots of tournaments,
yes.
yours included.
Yes.
You'll have the whole minors and majors coming up.
Yes.
How do you see the busyness of the scene right now?
Well, it's definitely, there's a lot going on in Counter-Strike at the moment, and I think it's very much, evolving. So things are moving fast. There's a lot of tournament, but also things are eventually like moving in the right direction, in a quite natural way. So we see, like, obviously we have two big major cycles every year. They're kind of like, the big milestones for the community and for the fans and for the players, and everything revolves around that. But definitely the calendar is very busy, but is gradually getting to a point where tournaments are getting like different spaces into the ecosystem, serving more certain specific regions or certain specific tiers of teams, and eventually that's benefit for the ecosystem. It's still a bit congested, but it could be worse. I would say complete lack of tournament and ecosystem is definitely much.
You'd rather have a lot of tournaments than
I'd rather have a bit too much than too little.
But what's some of the issues with too much? I mean, if we take for granted congestion, and even though you say people are sort of finding different things in different tournaments, what's the problem with congestion?
Well, there's a number of problems. Well, one obviously is like for the players in terms of the schedule. It's becoming really hectic, especially in terms of travel. They're almost traveling every week at this point. And that obviously affects their performance and their mindset ultimately. So you can see already there's a lot of teams and pro players that are cutting down on the number of events they go to, which is quite good because it leaves more space to up and coming teams and tier 2 teams and so on to develop and get some of their spotlight. And on the fan side, obviously, being able to see like so many matches from the same players, or being able to see the same matchups a lot of times, sometimes it gets a bit tiring. So
coming on the back of that, I mean, what's your why then do you want to take on this huge major product and actually be the one to put in maybe not more tournaments, but be responsible for some of the many? I mean, do you not think you should throttle a little back maybe?
We did. I mean, if you look at the ECS, for example, compared to other leagues, even if we are, larger in terms of amount of money that we pay out every year, we have a much smaller footprint, and that's a conscious choice. We only have 10 teams participating so that we can reduce the number of matches played during the online season and also get a higher profile of matches, so higher quality content. So our philosophy is already, pushing in the direction of quality over quantity. I mean, with a major, obviously we're working with some of the indications that we got from Valve as well. We've been actually working together, trying to suggest potential improvements and so on the format.
Does that also include, I mean, the discussions with Valve up into the majors, the congestion? Do they actually see this problem too?
I think Valve is really supportive of the ecosystem. They like to see that there's a lot happening around Counter-Strike, and therefore I don't think they see that as an issue, to be honest.
So it's not like in your discussions leading up to the major, they're also seeing this maybe problem or hurdle?
To be honest with you, we never really talked that much about that specific topic. When we talk, we always talk about the major specifically and what we can do for the major to make the major better, to make the minors better, to improve the overall system around the major.
I'm asking because some might say that Valve play, together with the TOs obviously, a role in maybe minimizing the burnout or the maybe saturation of the market. I
think it's easy to put that responsibility on Valve, but I think that everyone has, in his part of the ecosystem, has his own responsibility as well. I think, as I mentioned, the players being more selective in deciding which tournaments and which leagues they really want to play in, or the organization maybe and the teams telling their players to focus more, or the organizers like ourselves, trying to have a footprint that it doesn't, overly extend too much. That's that's down to the individual organizations as well. It's easy to ask Valve, but
yeah, hey, you made this game, now it's on you.
Yeah, but it's not their philosophy. We all know that, right? So I think it's obviously, there's people argue if that's a good model or a bad model. I actually, like the model quite a lot.
It leaves you some space.
It gives us the opportunity to build events like this. It gives us opportunity to work on projects like the major. And I think that this year, is going to be quite interesting, especially with the major. We're definitely going to, do a lot in terms of working on the format itself, but also in a way to create a really interesting, compelling content for the community. So for example, we already announced that all the minors are going to be played here in London, and they're actually going to be played in a 2-week-ish time frame rather than being spread out over over a month. And that's hopefully going to be a positive element on one side to create a new experience for the teams that are participating in the minors, so help emerging teams to get more of a spotlight and visibility, and for the fans also to have an appointment that is easier to follow and to engage with.
Now that we're talking about your communications with Valve and working together on the major, one of the biggest, I think, news coming out was the new ownership rule, or the conflict of interests problem. Yeah. So you already from FACEIT said, okay, this was actually coming from Valve. Can you run us through maybe a little bit of that? How does that actually work? Is it Valve? Does Gabe call you up and say, okay, this is no good anymore? What's really going on there?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's good to say that we already had quite a lot of rules regarding conflict of interest in ECS, for example, and we've been working alongside with teams and players that are in those positions, trying to resolve those. Then Valve decided to take a stance on it as well, which we are fully supportive of, because of course, as we already have similar rules, and we believe that ultimately for the credibility and stability of the ecosystem, it's a fundamental rule that needs to be in place. I think it's very positive because on one side, in a ecosystem like CSGO where you have different organizers, it's hard for us, on our own to push certain rules that are more, let's say, at the systemic level, without the support of all the organizers coming on board and adopting the same rules. For example, ban of Valve players. I think that's another big topic that's been going back and forth. Some organizers allow them to play in the tournaments, some other organizers don't. There's no uniformity between different organizers. But I think that Valve stepping in and taking a stance should help creating a more uniformity.
But you said you're already beginning to tweak your rules a little bit in that direction. Wouldn't it be easier to just say, okay, now we have a pretty popular product in ECS and now also the major? This is what it's going to be like. We don't have to need to wait for Valve. Why didn't you just do it like?
Well, it's kind of what we did. Yeah. It's just like maybe it's harder for us to have a clear cut and start enforcing things like right away. If it's just us or us and a few others. But it's not the entire ecosystem adopting certain rules. It's much easier when the publisher sets a guideline that stands for everyone that wants to operate in this ecosystem. I think if you look at League of Legends, for example, they always had this rule, and Riot has always been very strict in enforcing it, and I think it's worked really well for them, at least from that standpoint. And I think this is going to be something positive for CSGO as well.
Yeah, so it was about time, in your opinion?
I think it's,
because it's nothing new that this problem exists. We've been talking about it for some years.
I think now it's the time, because we got to a point where the scene is quite big. We're talking about millions of dollars, or if not tens of millions of dollars at stake every year with Counter-Strike. There's a big interest, big companies, corporations involved, media companies, you name it. So we got to a point where we have to really address all these issues that are critical for the credibility of the ecosystem, for conflict of interest, integrity. All these things are becoming more and more relevant.
But my point was, that's nothing new. You've had money in the system, and
yes,
some would say.
If you think about it, still 4 years ago, we were still running monthly tournaments with $1,500 in prize money, and we had all the best players in the world participating, and the best teams are now competing here for millions of dollars. So the scene evolved really quickly and grew very quickly.
So I'm hearing you say that it's actually the money, or the level of price payment that dictates when, okay, now is the time to step in? Because if you look at it from a principle level, it should be the same, right?
Sure. I think that's the investment gives you also the resources to be able to, make the overall system better, right? So maybe like when you're running a monthly tournament for $1,500, conflict of interest isn't your first concern. Yeah. But then when you start having large brands get involved, large multi-million-dollar distribution deals and sponsorship deals.
Yeah, and you have some people already seeing.
You have to protect the credibility and the integrity of the competition.
So that's it for the first part of my interview with Michele Attisani of FACEIT. We'll be back with the second part in just a little while. Before that though, let's take a look at the new CSPPA, the Counter-Strike Pro Players Association. A player union, it's finally here after much talks and many years of waiting. So let's take a little bit of a look at what players actually think about it. At ESL Cologne, we had the players come and talk to us about it, and also ESL as a TO. So let's find out what they say.
think it's good that we get a player union in CS. I think it's something that we have been needed for a long time. Hopefully it's one of those situations where we actually have something to say, and not like just like a small voice, but actually a big voice within the CSGO scene, especially when it comes to contracts with new talents or signing contracts. I think that's where you can use that player union who can give you some advice on how to do different contracts and actually make them legal for people to sign them.
Yeah, like having someone who knows what they're talking about, like the law part, is definitely really important, because there's so many sneaky things people can put in small print or like misword something. So like you read it like, oh, this is fine, and you read it again, you're like, oh my god, I signed that, like I'm so stupid. So it's definitely good to have like an actual professional go over it, because then it just stops all like the mishaps happening.
I think a player union is a great thing actually. We try to talk to players as much as possible to get direct feedback on what they think is important, what they want to do, how they feel about everything that's happening in CSGO as an ecosystem, on the tournament side, on the team side. So getting a more structured process for that, getting a more structured group for that, it's great.
I think for us the obvious choice is about the buyout. Buyout is set by our organization, and it can be set just to keep people away, or it actually just to push people into a bad situation, like people have not so long left of their contract, but they cost more than other people would do if they had a 2 years contract, basically. So I think we need to find a calculation towards this buyout. The problem is there's always two aspects of it. The organization wants to make money because they have to buy a new player maybe for that money. So there's other things, and I think that is one of the things we could do, actually a calculated way of have approximately what a buyout is, instead of just somebody saying 1 million for somebody who has a 3 months contract left. I don't think that's fair for CS, and it might kill CS at some point that the buyouts are that high.
It's definitely good to like try and knuckle down on the events, because I could not imagine being a professional and leaving my house for 7 weeks and going to 9 events. Like, holy hell, I would just lose my mind. Like, there's no like progression within CS, and the only good teams who become really good, for example, is like Astralis, who choose to dodge events because they're smart. Like, they realize, guys, we need to practice. We haven't practiced in 7 years because we've been traveling all our lives, you know. So it'll definitely be good, like, just to have, even if it's half the events we have now, that's still fine. The viewership will probably go up because people will be like, oh my god, there's a CS event on, I haven't seen CS in a week, instead of, dude, there's so much CS on. So yeah, I feel like it's definitely good.
I think we've been talking about event schedule for a long time. It's tough to align this with organizers, because it's tough to align this in a way where organizers say, okay, we're doing less, we're giving others more space. I also think the players need to align a bit more. They've traditionally always complained about playing too many events, but then our experience is that every new thing that pops up, they still play it. So they have a hard time going a couple of weeks without going to a tournament.
So those were our talks with players and ESL at ESL Cologne about the CSPPA. It's going to be interesting to see what they can really do and what effect they have on the scene. Now let's turn our attention back to the interview with FACEIT CEO Michele Attisani that I did at the ESCS Season 5 finals in London. Here we go. So talking about different, not maybe conflict of interest, but different interested parties in this. It was a big thing when you announced that you were going to be streaming on YouTube, and then ESL went ahead and went with Facebook, and there's been a huge debate, both of your choice, but especially theirs. Are you, I mean, the way it's gone with your own adventure with Facebook, YouTube, and the sales with Facebook, are you looking at that saying, okay, we made the right choice and they made the wrong, or in total we should have stayed with Twitch? Or?
I think it's first of all, like, it's hard to judge these decisions from the outside without having all the elements. So I can't really blame ESL for signing with Facebook, because I really don't know what the deal looks like. And I also know, like, as a fact, that Facebook is actually investing a lot of money and resources to improve their product for live streaming and for esports. So
It's Astralis yelling in the background. We have to. I think they might catch him. Okay. But yeah, you were saying.
So yeah, it's hard to it's hard to judge without having all the elements. I think when we signed with YouTube, there was definitely criticism from the community. But if you look at what the community thinks right now, it feels now that a lot of people are actually enjoying YouTube, and they actually think it's a good platform.
Because there's something else that's worse?
No, I don't think so. I think that was even before the case, even before Facebook coming in more massively into the scene. I think that it takes time to develop the right product and make something that works for gaming and for esports, and also it takes time for people to adopt new behaviors and use different products. Definitely Facebook has work to do, and they know it themselves as well, and I know that actually they're doing a lot of work to try to improve the product and make sure that gamers and esport fans will enjoy it. So I think that overall the fact that there's more competition in the space in terms of media rights, that's definitely very positive for esports, because that will ultimately drive for better deals for organizer, that in return will allow us to organize better events, better content, more interesting tournament.
Do you think that's something that the viewers might sometimes lose track of, like how important the money really is? Or
well, it's very expensive to run this. Yeah. I think you can probably realize that, and you need to find ways to make it sustainable. Most of the events and most of the leagues, events and tournaments are running at a loss right now. There's very, very few that are profitable. So yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind that if we want to keep growing esports, we need to make sure that the products we build have a stronger commercial value and appeal, and that we can generate more and more revenues to grow the scene. Absolutely. Yeah,
touching on that, one of the last subjects we should talk about is having new, maybe mainstream viewers coming in. Obviously, you have deals with different countries, national TV that want to show it. Yeah. Do you think about how much do you value that, and how do you really work with that? Trying to maybe change some stuff that might be easier on a mainstream viewer.
Yeah,
we had Blast Pro series that really tried something new, and the old maybe fan base didn't take so kindly to it. I mean, what's that in your head?
So, first of all, it really depends on the country. So, for example, what works on Danish television probably doesn't work on American television, and what works on American television probably doesn't work on German television. So there's actually a lot of thinking that goes into deciding what the right product looks like for the right distribution channel. And it's not just we're saying television as that was a general thing. Even specific networks and different channels have different audiences, and what could work for a specific channel in UK could probably not work for another channel in UK. So it takes a lot of effort to try and build the right product and put the right product in the right places. That's one of the things we've been working on for the last 2 years or so, and I think the approach is could be very different. For us, obviously, the core is having the esport competition. So we'll never do anything that disrupt the credibility of our competition from an esport standpoint.
What does that mean exactly?
So I'll give an example. If we have to change the format of our event to make it more interesting for television,
sort of
we're not going to do that.
Okay.
We're not going to do that because we are an esports competition first. And that's untouchable, let's say. At the same time, what we're going to do is try to translate what we are into different distribution platforms. So, for example, there will be quite a few announcements around the major and things that we're going to do regarding to television, which are, let's say, pretty innovative in the way that we're getting what we're building with a major, and we're telling that story to a different audience on a different platform or a different channel.
So curated.
Yeah, absolutely. So built like in a way that makes it more appealing to a different audience that doesn't necessarily want to watch 8 hours of live Counter-Strike in a row.
But coming from that realization, don't you think it's inevitable to change the format? I mean, maybe have live simultaneous matches played, or shortening the amount of days used, or I mean, is it really possible to get around it?
There's well, first of all, you need to understand like what the priority is, right? So for us, distribution on linear TV and traditional television, it's not a priority. So we're not going to change the format because of that, or at least in the context of ECS. Now, maybe like tomorrow we'll work on a different esport property on a different game where we think that television is going to be the main distribution channel. Then we're going to build a format that is built for television first. But when it comes to Counter-Strike, when it comes to ECS, we know that our core is esports, so it's going to be built for esports. Now we'll look into how we can bring that to television and adapt it to television, and that's what we're going to do. But if we talk about Counter-Strike, I don't think that television is going to replace the digital platforms we use anytime soon. If any, maybe probably the opposite.
Yeah, because there are,
in the long term.
There definitely, some people are definitely gunning on that. I mean, trying to sell this to something else because it's pretty easy to understand. So you're not afraid to get overrun by people who are maybe betting on the horse that says mainstream on the side?
I'm definitely curious to see. I think they, we talk about Blast specifically.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy like what they built. It's I think it's quite fun. It's quite enjoyable as a format, but it's something completely different. It's something that us specifically we're not interested in. So I actually wish them all the success in the world, because I think that they're actually doing a great service to the whole ecosystem by creating a more, let's say, mainstream-friendly format that can attract new fans and grow the market. So, I actually wish them to do well. At the same time, I see that it's something very different from what we do.
All right, I think that's it, Michele. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And good luck with Minors Majors.
Perfect.
And ECS Season 5 Finals. That's all we have for you this time for the third episode of HLTV Confirmed. I hope you enjoyed it. And like I say every time, please be sure to leave your feedback in the comments so we can do even better next time. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, and I'll see you.